Welcome to all. This is Government Contracting Academy's free contracting event. And this week is special. This week is unique. On Thursday, we have two showings, two webinars for our top 10 mistakes government contractors make when they get into government contracting. We have two showings. The first one is at 12 p.m. Eastern Thursday, and the next one is at 7 p.m. Eastern Thursday, February 27th. I would like to introduce Randall Wimmer. Randall won $2 billion in federal government contracts. What does that mean? It means he knows what he's talking about. When he describes the top 10 mistakes he's seen, it counts. It counts. You should throw up your flares. You pay attention. Randall, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, but you know what? I'd like to say something about that too. Yeah, I won $2 billion, but most of that was in big business. And the point I'd like to make with that is that if you're in big business, if you're an executive with Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, ICF, pick your mid-major, whatever your federal government contracting company that you're with, and you say, hey, I can do this, and you launch your own small business, it is completely different. It is completely different. What you do and how you win and how you're successful in a big business is completely different than what you do when you're a small business. So I launched my small business. I realized I don't know a damn thing. So then what I started to do is I started to job hop, and I went to these big businesses to learn how to do this industry. And I learned it, and I was successful in big business. And then I got back to launching my small business again, and I had to unlearn every single thing that I had learned in big business, because big business and little business is completely different. Night and day, Jonathan. And like, no, most people don't realize that how you're successful in big business, how you're successful in small business, completely different. And the mindset that you have in big business, it will it will cause you to fail in small business. And I'll give you an example here, just to kind of jump right in. If you ever talk with a big business executive who's quote unquote mentoring you, they're going to say, "Oh, you got to shape the opportunity, you got to shape the requirement, and and if you don't recognize at least 40% of the words in the request for proposal as being yours from a white paper or something like that, you don't bid on it. You don't bid on it." Well, that's the mentality that I had after leaving big business and launching my small businesses. And the deal is if you have that mentality, you will never bid and you'll never be successful. Never, ever, ever. Because there's a lot of fallacies of what I just said. If you're IBM and you pick up the phone and you call some government program manager who's got a procurement coming out in the next 6 months, buddy, they are giddy to talk with IBM. Giddy. I'm talking like, whoo, this is like a field trip, like the varsity's coming over here, that the captain of the cheerleading squad is going to come over here and talk to me, and the cool people, all that kind of stuff. So they are like, they will get people, lined up and, conference rooms and auditorium to listen to IBM. Now, if you're Small Biz LLC and you're calling this government program manager, to get some time on their schedule, you're not even going to, his gatekeeper's not even going to pick up the phone. You can't even get to the gatekeeper. And I've been in this industry for going on a quarter of a century, and there's only one time as a small business that I was able to get in to see the customer before the actual solicitation went out. Only one time, and that was for a $115 million bid. Small business set aside 115, so it was massive. But that wasn't the real reason. The real reason is we had a major partner, a big business partner in Northrop Grumman Task, who had a personal relationship with the customer, and they're the ones who got us in. And if it wasn't for that relationship, because basically we didn't get the audience with the government program manager, our sub did, Northrop Grumman Task did, and so that's just BS. So the mindset that all these big business executives have, you got to shape the opportunity, and like they have no idea what it's like to be a small business owner, because we are like, we are unworthy to be talked to by the government PMs. And when they say that, they kind of tip their hat that they're absolutely 100% clueless about how Small Business USA works. And so that's just like one of the many differences. between big business and little business. And like, for example, IBM never has to talk about risk. They are the lowest risk company in the world. The question is if IBM can't do it, then you have to argue. You have to like very seriously consider whether it can be done. If IBM can't do something, you've got to take a step back and say, did we just ask for something that's impossible to be done? Because IBM, man, they're IBM. So, that kind of begs the question. They've got nothing to deal with the risk, nothing. Now, as a small business, we're all perceived to be crazy risky. Every single one of us, every single small business out there is perceived to be high risk. They're wondering whether or not we're working out of our basement, whether or not we're going to be able to make payroll. They're going to be, they're wondering whether or not they're going to have to teach us how to do every single simple thing. And, like I said, whether or not we're going to be in business for the next couple of months. That's what every government person thinks.
Which is fair.
And you know what, though? It's true. Yours truly was like, about 15, 20 minutes away from not being able to make his payroll once. So you don't pay your people, guess what? You go out of business. And so all this stuff is true. Every single one of their fears is actually founded in reality. No, and what you have to do as a small business is you got to spend, at least half of your proposal overcoming that and like making them feel a little bit more comfortable that you're the low risk one. Like we're the safe small business, and being the safe small business is about the best thing that you could ever be labeled as, the safe small business. We're the ones who are low risk. And so like I said, completely different between big companies and little companies. So I won $2 billion in big business work, but I won over 400 million in small business, and that's the more impressive number because those dollars you got to they're more applicable to small business owners, but you gotta do some crazy stuff to win that kind of money.
You gotta want it.
Yeah, you gotta want it, and you gotta know you gotta have a few tricks up your sleeves in order to be able to pull that off. So, you meant I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I saw those wheels turning in your head there, Jonathan. We're talking about our upcoming webinars. Those are live events. Those are going to be both live. The one at noon on February 27th, and the one at 7 p.m. Later that night. And the value of a live webinar is you get to ask those crazy questions.
Yes,
and if you're asking the question, I guarantee you, whatever question is asked, that is not the only person who has that same question. And that's the real value of it. And what we do is, I have a policy that I don't get off the air until every single question is answered.
Yes,
and that's honestly, that's where the best information exchange happens is in the Q&A session at the end of it. Now, sometimes what we have to do is we have to talk for 30, 45, even 60 minutes just to get you to the point where you're able to ask the right questions because you don't know what you don't know. And that is the hardest thing about launching a company is you don't know what you don't know. And once you start scratching the surface of what you need to know, it's like, oh my gosh, now you've got a ton of questions. And that's what usually happens is, people, like, hey, what's there to know? Is government contracting. It's pretty simple. They release an RFP and you respond, or you try to get a subcontract through a big company, and this is pretty simple until you start peeling that onion. And then once you start peeling it, it's like, oh, wow. There's a ton of details in there that you don't even know about until you actually start learning a little bit more. So that, that 30 to 60 minutes of webinar content is usually enough to get to get some pretty crazy, powerful questions surfacing in a lot of people's minds. So again, there are live events. They have questions and answers afterwards, and we'll go as long as it takes to get everybody's questions, answered. And there's the real value of it, I think, because you're getting real answers to real questions that pertain to you.
And what let's just hype that a little bit more. What a unique opportunity. We have hundreds of people that have signed up for this, and as you were saying, all questions, you're not leaving until all questions are answered.
Yeah.
Let's swing back to the theme, the top 10 mistakes that you see government contractors make. leveraging this as a build up there again. Hey, adding context to
Yeah.
enable, better questions on more detailed, more robust questions on Thursday. Top 10 mistakes. Let's touch on a couple of them today.
Well, let's talk about what a mistake is. These are instead of calling them mistakes, these are the 10 obstacles that are going to keep you from being successful.
I like that.
These are the 10 things that you have to be able to do correctly in order to be successful. So we're calling them mistakes, we're calling them landmines, we're calling them different things. But what they really are is like, these are the 10 things that if you fall into that trap, you're never going to be successful. And the obverse of that is you could just as easily say, these are the 10 things that you must do in order to be successful. Now, this is what's crazy, Jonathan, because we were talking about this, for several months now about doing this webinar, and we started researching it, and it really does come down to about 10. I just assumed that there would be 100 things, because I had never really seriously looked at it from this perspective of coming up with a top 10 list. I've always said like, hey, that's an issue, and that's an issue, and that's an issue. But once I started doing that, even though I came up with a lot of little tidbit ones, they all kind of fell into one of 10 categories. It's amazing. Like, it really is 10. It's not 100. It's not 1,000. It's 10. 10 is a manageable number. Mm-hmm. It is a crazy manageable number. If you get these 10 things that you got to do and you got to do correctly, statistically speaking, you are going to be successful in this industry. It's a numbers game. And as long as you're not beating your head up against the wall and you're not jumping off the cliff every single time, you're going to get to where you want to be, in federal government contracting, because it truly is a numbers game. And a lot of people, and that's one of the biggest mistakes, is a lot of people, they don't realize that, and they don't pursue it like it's a numbers game. And because of that, they never do the numbers in order to be successful. But you mentioned hyping it. Here's a common one, and I was just asked this yesterday. I was talking with a person, and they say, hey, Randy, I just like, how do you get these, these teaming agreements that you're always talking about? All this kind of stuff. Like, I'm struggling even getting a teaming agreement. It's like, well, I said, well, tell me about your company. And, we're the best at IT, and we're the best at this, and we're the best at that. And I'm thinking like, okay, you're saying that you're the best. Give me a proof point. Because guess what?
Show me.
Yeah, show me. It's just like, everybody, tell me one small business owner that's not going to say that they're the best at doing IT services, or the best at project management, or the best at whatever it is that they do. Tell me one small business owner that's not going to say that. Because right now there's over 100,000 small businesses that are registered to do work with the federal government. Over 100,000, and I guarantee you, there's not a single one of them that's saying we're not the best at this. Yeah, not a single one. So all 100,000, of these small businesses are saying the same exact thing that you are. We're the best at it. We do it. We're really, 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 really good at what it is that we do. Just like the other 100,000 plus, So, and I told him, I said, you've got no differentiation. None. Zero. There's nothing about your company that's going to separate you from the myriad of other, companies. Nothing. So now that begs the question, why you over the other 100,000? And he had no answer to that. And I said, there's two really good answers, for why you. The first one is that, you have unique customer insights and experience and relationships because you've been supporting them with these massive prime contracts. You're already supporting, NASA in that organization that, that your prime is bidding on. You're already doing it, and you're doing it, supporting $50 million prime contracts, and you're crushing it. You've got great past performances, and you not only have, that one $50 million prime contract, you've got 5 of them all supporting that same organization. Now that's the ideal way to do it. That's the best way to do it. The way you can differentiate your company from the other 100,000. Like, tell me what other 100,000, which company in that other 100,000 that's got 5, prime contracts all over $50 million supporting NASA. There isn't any. And the reason why is because if they did, they wouldn't be small businesses anymore. You know what I mean? So that's the ideal way. But by definition, a small business, and especially a startup, will never be able to do it that way. So now the next question is, well, without this like robust, ridiculous past performance history, how do you do it? Well, you do it the same way you do it when you're in high school. If you're a high school senior and you want to become a a forensic accountant or a management, or mergers and acquisition consultant at one of these swanky New York, firms, and you're a high school senior and you create your resume, and on your resume you're talking about how you're the president of the Key Club, and you're the or the secretary of the Spirit Club, and you ran track, and you're going to blast out your resume that says all that. Because you have no work experience. You've never been an M&A consultant. You've never been a management consultant. You're not a CPA. You're not this. You're not that. You have no work experience, none at all, to show McKinsey, Deloitte, Boston Consulting, Ernst & Young. You have nothing on your resume that says I'm a low risk hire. Nothing. Nothing. Yeah, you just reek of being high risk. Because you got no work history on it. So, but you're a pretty clever kid, and so you decide, like, well, without any work history, I got to go get some credentials. So what do? You go to MIT and you get a computer science degree, and then you go across the street to Harvard and you get a Harvard MBA, and then you even sit for your CPA exam. So now you got an MIT comp sci degree. You got a Harvard MBA, and you're a CPA. So now you've got three credentials on that resume of yours. You still don't have any work history, none at all, no work history at all. But with those three credentials, you've got people standing in line to hire you, not because of your work history, but because of your credentials. And your startup is the same exact, thing as a high school student. You lack work history, you lack past performances, you lack references. So how do you overcome that? With credentials. And this is where I'm going to steal our thunder a little bit. In corporate America, or in corporate world, ISO certifications are like college degrees for your company. ISO 9001 quality management systems is kind of like the bachelor's degree. And you get that first because that deals with how you manage your companies, your management systems. It includes, because people always ask me, like, well, why is ISO certification so valuable? So this is what being ISO 9001 means. It means that you have been audited by an accredited third party and found fully compliant with the globally accepted industry best practices for management systems. So what are management systems? Risk management programs, customer satisfaction programs, communication programs, version control, programs. If you're in IT services delivery, that kind of stuff, it just keeps on going. All of these major things that you need to be doing as a small business, you've got formal, globally accepted industry best practices, to help you do them. So what do these industry best practices include? Roles and responsibilities for your personnel, documented processes and procedures, policies, guidelines, manuals, just keeps on going. Boom, 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 boom. And those things are basically the infrastructure of your company. It's the way you do things, And that's what I see, being a major problem with a lot of small businesses. They operate their company and they act like a local high school band's car wash. It's chaos. You know what I mean? They never do the same thing twice. It's just total chaos, and people confuse that, that band fundraising car wash is a company because they have customers and they make revenue. And it's like, okay, yeah, okay, but that's not a company, or certainly not a successful company.
And that's the average, right? Like that's the mean. Yeah. That's what most, which is why the government knows to look for it, because it's common.
It's more than the mean. It's like 99%, literally 99% of small businesses do not have that infrastructure, do not have it. So the way that you prove you have it and that you're in that top 1% is to get ISO 9001 Quality Management System certification. Again, it's like getting that college degree. It's like getting that computer science degree from MIT. And then what you can do is you can get a second ISO certification, which is like a graduate degree. And for example, if you're in services, there's a 95% probability that 95% of the information that you touch as a services company in the federal government contracting industry, 95% is either going to be classified, controlled unclassified, PII, personal identifiable information, or proprietary information. 95%. Information security risks are the largest risks faced by the federal government. The largest.
Getting higher.
And it is getting higher. That's right. So what do? You go out there and you get ISO 27001 Information Security Management certification. So now with that certification and ISO 9001, you are literally in the top 0.1 percentile, not 99 percentile. You're in the 99.9th percentile of all, not small businesses, but all companies in the United States. So, those credentials add value to bid opportunities. They prove that to your partners that you are a low risk partner. It proves that you are adding additional value in the form of industry best practices. It shows that you are a long-term viable entity, that you got it going on. And, you can add strategic value as a partner, not only to your industry partners, but also to the government. So that is how you differentiate your company from the over 100,000, plus small businesses that are in industry, of which 99% do not have those credentials.
Speaking on the high level or tying it all together, that matters. You differentiate yourself and you're measuring that from risk, perceived risk. The government, because government is focused on risk. It's that's its number. It's what it's paying attention to, and you can differentiate yourself by becoming this 1% using the frameworks.
And Jonathan, our listeners shouldn't believe me. Go look. At how the federal government evaluates proposals.
Oh, good call.
Across the federal government, proposals are all evaluated the same way. Every single proposal factor is evaluated with a technical/risk rating. Every single proposal in the federal government, you are given a technical/risk rating. Now they have a choice. They could either give you a single technical/risk rating, a single one, or they can break those in pieces, and they can give you a technical rating and a risk rating for every factor. But usually what they'll do is they'll combine it into a combined technical/risk rating. So risk is half of your proposal score. Half. Now nobody knows that, and they think it's all about their solution. Your solution, believe it or not, if you actually start looking at it, how it's actually evaluated, it's way less than half of it. But nobody ever says, you know what? Hey, I got a really great low risk story. I'm going to bid on this. Nobody ever does that. Everybody always says like, hey, I'm really good at cybersecurity. I'm going to bid on this because that's a cybersecurity effort. Well, okay, that's great and wonderful. But what's even more important than that is do you have a low risk story? Because that's going to be the majority of your score. Do you have a quality management system? Nobody ever says that. Nobody ever says, hey, I got this great quality management system. I'm going to bid on this, cybersecurity thing. And that is actually more important than having cybersecurity skills, because you can always partner for cybersecurity skills. Always partner for that. But as they prime, you cannot partner for management. You know what I mean? Because you're the prime contractor. You're the one responsible. You're the one who's managing the contract. But you can always partner out to get a better cybersecurity partner than what you're capable of bringing to the table yourself.
Yeah, I was active listening, but what was popping into my head is still empathetically walking into the government's shoes, and why do they perceive risk? Why is risk so bad in comparison? You were talking about this awesome. I'm picturing most businesses perceiving kind of looking too narrow, too close to what's right in front of them, not the bigger picture, right? Like why is risk? Why does the government care about risk more than your awesome solution? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why? Yeah.
Well, if you're a big company, it's 50-50, but for a small business, the worst thing that can happen to a small business, let's just say, let's just say it this way. I'm going to give you the scenario that happens more times than not. You're responsible for a government, department, and two of your prime contractors just graduated from small business status. So all of the points and all the credit that you were taking credit for your small business set aside goals, accomplishment on your small business, set aside program scorecard, they just went away because two of your small businesses just graduated. And one of the higher ups who's being evaluated for an SES position, one of the evaluation thing is like, hey, how did your organization do with the small business set aside program? Now they got some catch up to do. Like, oh my gosh, we got to start bundling some stuff. That contract that's up for recompete with Booz Allen, that's Booz Allen's been doing. Hey, let's flip that over to a small business set aside, and so we can take credit for that. And now all of a sudden, something that was being done by an industry, multi-billion-dollar industry leader, now it just became a small business set aside. Now the government program manager, he's wetting himself. He's like, oh my God, what are you doing? This is a vital mission, support contract. And, you just made it, go from, an industry leading multi-billion-dollar entity
going to happen.
And now it's going to go to a small business, that nobody's ever heard of. Oh my gosh. So here's the question. What are they most concerned about? What's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is that they give it to a small business and within 3 months, they're no longer in business. That's the worst.
Which is a real thing, right? That's a real risk.
Real thing. I joke about it, but it's a very common thing. Winning yourself out of business as a small business owner is a very real thing. They implode underneath that contract. They don't have the cash flow. They don't have the processes in place. They don't know how to do it. They don't have the infrastructure. All of a sudden, they just can't keep up with it. That's a very real thing. If you don't have anything documented, you can staff as many people as you want, but they can't help you because they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do it in your company. So, you can staff up all day long, but they're not going to help you in your company because they don't know how to do it. None of their actions are going to fit together with everybody else's actions in your company because you haven't thought it through. And what happens is these, they implode. Hell, I almost did that with my very first prime contract. I was not ISO certified with my very first prime contract. And I had won it in 2010. And about 2012, I was on the verge of losing it. Why? Because my company lacked corporate maturity. I was staffing up my corporate office to execute that prime contract, but basically it was me doing everything, and I had a gaggle of people following me around watching me. Why? Because I couldn't convey what I needed to have done. I couldn't tell the person that I just hired to be the operations person, this is how we do things. This is how we do things in HR. Because it was all in my head. And to be honest with you, I was winging it. I never, did the same thing, in the same way, 2 consecutive times. I was winging it because I had nothing documented. I had no repeatable process. So I was reinventing the wheel every single time something new happened. And I was on the verge of losing that contract because of my poor performance. So what I did is I researched, hey, how do you quickly mature your company? Because I'm about ready to lose my gravy train here. And everything pointed, to the ISO 9001 framework as being the best way to do that. So that's what I did. I got ISO 9001 certified, and this is what happened immediately. One, my performance immediately improved. Immediately improved because now I had my corporate team. We were able to put people in swim lanes. Everybody says, oh, swim lanes are bad. No, swim lanes are great. That means that I don't have to worry about what's happening in your swim lane because I know
everybody knows. Everybody knows.
That's right. Yeah. The problem with it is when you start getting these, these mid-sized companies and they're truly like stovepipes, or silos. You don't want that because then they're not communicating. But trust me, on a small business, everybody's communicating. You can't help but to do that. So what you want to make sure that every lane is being covered. That's the most important thing. So the very first thing that happened is we improved our performance. The second thing that we did is we created efficiency. I hadn't been able to bid at all, after I won that very first prime contract. Why? Because man, I was just treading water. I couldn't keep up with managing my customer, those deliverables and those requirements. I just couldn't keep up with it. So we created efficiency to enable ourselves to grow and to be able to bid. And then the third thing is now we look completely different. We look completely different as a bidder. Instead of looking like that high risk small business, now we look like we were the most mature, safe bidder. So what I did after getting my corporate credentials is I decided that I was going to change my pipeline, and my whole growth strategy. And at that point, I decided that I was going to grow in a step function. And that is I was going to bid on only massive small business set-asides, where we had that competitive advantage through those corporate credentials to be the low risk bidder, the most important thing. Didn't matter what it was in. So it just had to be big. So once I got my corporate credentials, the smallest thing that we bid on was $28.8 million. Now this is the areas that we were bidding in, bidding big. Didn't matter what the service offerings were. We were bidding big in medical healthcare. We $35 million Defense Healthcare Agency contract. We were bidding big in the Intel world. Trust me, I'd never served a single day in the Intel community, but that was a $65 million contract. And then, we were doing the same thing with centers of excellences in the Army. We were doing the things in Navy that we had never done before. Hell, we were supporting Sandia National Laboratories. Hell, believe me, I'm not a nuclear physicist. So all of these different things, that we were doing. The only thing that we had in common across all of those is that we were the low risk bidder. Low risk bidder. Now we tried to partner really well for the solution, to actually help us with the solution, because, no one single small business is doing logistics, doing, Intel, doing nuclear engineering, doing test and evaluation, doing congressional support, doing healthcare IT, doing software development. No one company, especially a small one, is really truly capable of doing those things without partnering really well. And that's what we did. So we partnered really well, but we brought the low risk, feature to the table.
I think you just described the dream state, the state after working through these top 10 common mistakes that government contractors make, right?
Yeah, you'll never get there though unless you, like I said, the mistake. So this is the way you got to look at this thing. The mistake is small businesses don't differentiate themselves. So that's the mistake. But let's flip that around. The way you differentiate yourself is you want to be the low risk bidder. So once you do that, now you're positioned for success. And so, like I said, I've wrestled with this term, top 10 mistakes. Well, it's really, you got to flip it around, and, because every single one of those mistakes is a positive thing. And that is, avoid the mistake by doing this positive thing. And that positive thing is going to, essentially guarantee your success. So, I want to look at it as not just things to avoid, but it's also things that you should do, in order to be successful.
There again, to differentiate yourself, because the vast majority of companies, the vast majority of audience members here that are getting into it are probably making these mistakes now. Like the quicker they're identified, the quicker they can be alleviated and then get to that promised land, to get to that dream state. We are at time. Let's talk about February 27th, our two showings. We have one at 12 p.m. Eastern and then another one at 7 p.m. Eastern. These are our webinars where Randy's going to describe, he's going to add detail to these top 10 mistakes that government contractors make. High probability, our audience are watching. High probability, the vast majority of government contractors in the United States are making these mistakes now. Why? Because they're common.
Like I said, they're the one. I'll say it this way. I've never seen a successful small business owner who's making one of these mistakes. You've got to avoid all 10 of them. Every single last one of them. If you are, that's it. Yeah. Any one of these things is going to keep you from being successful. Any one of them. And so the deal is you got to avoid all 10, because because every single one of these things in itself is a damning mistake that's going to keep you from being successful.
And it's more likely to happen than not. It takes active.
It happens by default. And a lot of these things are they're not intuitive. They're counterintuitive. Like saying, like, because most small businesses think like, hey, I'm too small to get ISO certified. Well, that's when you need it the most. Like, I don't need it yet because I'm so small. It's like, no, that's when you need it the most. You need these corporate credentials when you got nothing else going for your company.
When the risk is the highest.
That's right. So a lot of these, like I said, a lot of these things are counterintuitive, and that's why people don't do them, because they're like thinking like, well, I can't do it, or like, I'm not able to do it, or this is stupid right now at this stage of my company. It's like, not doing this thing is going to keep you from, that next level of success.
Well, I am looking forward to Thursday. This was an awesome presentation. Thank you, Randy. To our audience members, register now. The register links are going to be in the comments for this. And we look for, show up on Thursday with questions. Like take time to articulate what are you worried about? Formulate that now, and then let's present it to Randy on Thursday. Like you said, I believe you mentioned at the beginning of this, you will answer all questions.
The Q&A is probably the most effective piece, of the webinar.
Yes, sir. Okay, February 27th, 12 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Eastern. We look forward to speaking with you.
See you then.